apologize.
Oh, okay, thanks.
That was the technical.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Morning. Yeah, I just emailed Jesse. I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah, so that was our bad there. And Jean, have you met Peter?
Yes.
Okay.
We work together on the Diversity and Inclusion Council.
Right.
Excellent. And Jean, I was just telling Peter, so I'll open it up very broadly. I'll introduce each of you, kind of give each of you a very general lead in about the topic, and let you, speak for a few minutes on what you want to focus on, and then we'll move into question and answer. I'll pull questions from the chat. I also have written down a few, and we'll just kind of, keep a flow going.
Sure.
Great. All right. And then Shantae, if you want to just throw up the screen, the slide again, and then I'll hit broadcast and I'll just let everyone know we're going to get started in a moment. Great, thanks. Good morning, everyone. My name is Garrett Sheehan. We will get started with our webinar in just a moment. We'll let everyone get into the webinar and then we will get underway in just a moment. Thanks. Good morning, my name is Garrett Sheehan. I'm President and CEO of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce and Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce. We appreciate you joining us for today's webinar, The Value of Access and Partnerships Between Suppliers and Minority and Women Business Enterprises. This program is put on by our Diversity and Inclusion Council, and we have actually our co-chair, Jean Christensen, who we'll speak with in just a moment as part of our panel today. We want to again thank UI, Connecticut Natural Gas, and Southern Connecticut Gas for all of the support that they have provided to the Chamber. During the pandemic, it's allowed us to put on programming like this. Also, our streaming partners, other chambers across the region that we work closely with that share this content that we've been able to put on over the last several months. We are also supported by several investor companies, and it's without these companies, we could not do all of the programming and activities that we've been able to put on through March, April, May, June, all the way into the summer now as we continue during these very unusual times. But we are excited about the topic we have today. We've been doing several webinars over the last several months about diversity and inclusion. We've had an active Diversity and Inclusion Council for going on 3 years now, but we've also focused more on some of these key topics that impact our minority-owned businesses and how other businesses can support as well. Today's topic, working with our minority-owned businesses and finding access and opportunity and partnership. And we do this with so many of our partners, including List Connecticut, City of New Haven Economic Development, and Peter with the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council. So for today's webinar, I first want to introduce Jean Christensen. Jean is the President and CEO of Jean Christensen Associates. She's a chamber member, and as I mentioned, with Cecil Austin, she co-chairs our Diversity and Inclusion Council. Jean, thanks for joining us this morning. And I know in your business, you work with many small businesses, many of them minority-owned, women business enterprises, and work with them to find the opportunities that are out there to become more connected to some of the large organizations, get into supply chains, and really just grow their own enterprise.
Good morning, everyone. And Garrett, I want to just thank you very much for the opportunity to present today or to talk today. I also want to acknowledge my teammates on the Diversity and Inclusion Council for their work in helping to put this programming together. Yes, my business really focuses on connecting small businesses to opportunities with large corporations and government agencies. And in doing that, I realize how difficult it is. There's often a disconnect. There's a tremendous benefit to working with large corporations and government agencies, but for small businesses, there are a number of barriers to success. So my company is really focused on helping bridge the gap on both sides. So I'm excited about today's conversation.
Great, thank you. And we'll get into more of the details. I also want to let everyone know we have the chat box open. So as we're going through this, if you have questions, please put them in there. We'll get to as many of them as we can. So use the chat box as we're going on. I want to introduce now Peter Hurst, who is President and CEO of the New England Minority Supplier Development Council. And Peter, you've been on some of our other webinars as well, so it's great to have you back. Maybe I'll just start with you. Your organization covers all of New England, but I know in conversations that I've had with you, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in the New Haven region for our minority-owned businesses to connect more with some of the large suppliers.
So first of all, let me thank Garrett, you and Jean for having us as part of this conversation. It's a very important conversation. Let me just briefly tell you about what we do. The Greater New England Council is part of a network that includes the National Minority Supplier Development Council and 22 other regional councils across the country. We all share the aspirational goals of economic inclusion and minority business development, and we've been pursuing those goals for over 45 years. There are, in terms of the entire network, over 1,700 corporate members and 12,000 minority-owned businesses that have been certified by the Greater New England Council and the entire network. And we really have a number of initiatives that we think will help not only minority businesses in the Greater New Haven area, but also minority businesses in Connecticut.
Let me start off, Jean. One of the things I was reading on your website about your own kind of company pathway was that certifications make a huge difference. So maybe you could just start off by telling us a little bit about the certifications that are out there and how a business starts to get into that process of becoming certified.
Sure. So these certifications are directly related to the entities or the communities that want to do business with small minority and women-owned businesses. So by way of an example, there is a certification for women-owned businesses. There's a certification for minority-owned businesses. There's certifications for LGBT businesses. There's certifications for service disabled and disabled veterans. So it really depends on the market place that a small business is thinking about getting into. And typically the business needs to be owned and controlled by a diverse person to meet certification requirements for state, city, federal, and private supplier diversity programs. In my opinion, it's very important for businesses to identify themselves as minority owned or as diverse, and the certification is the vehicle to do that, so that the corporations, the government agencies, the federal agencies, and their partners that are looking to increase their spending with these businesses can recognize them.
And Peter, obviously you're right in the mix of actually getting the certifications out. Can you talk a little bit about the certification process? What should a business be prepared for, and what are some of the steps they need to take?
Well, let me quickly share with you what the criteria are. You have to be a U.S. citizen and a member of one of the following ethnic groups: Blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, Asian Indians, and Asian Pacific. And like Jean mentioned, for our certification, the minority group has to be the owners and controllers of the enterprise. The process is actually relatively straightforward. You can actually start it by going to our website, www.gnemstc.org, and it really entails uploading certain information. We look for organizing documents. Whether you're a corporation or an LLC, we want to see historical tax returns. We need to see proof of your ethnic background. And you can really get a lot of it done just through a portal that we have online. And the good news, there's a very important final step. We usually require a site visit because there is a real emphasis from our corporate members to make sure that our process, has the integrity that if someone says that they're a minority-owned business, in fact, they are minority-owned and controlled. The person who leads our effort is right there in New Haven, Ileana Perisic. So you can start the process online, but if you have questions, Ileana is very available, even in the whole pandemic context, via email and telephone.
And we're already getting some good questions in here. And so, Peter, I'll direct this first one at you. Is someone saying they're already certified in New York City, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. Do they need to be certified in Connecticut?
Well, unfortunately, there are parallel tracks of certification. The Greater New England Council and all of the other 22 regional councils are certifying businesses that want to do commerce with corporate America. And that is separate from those who want to do business with the respective states or cities in which they may be located. The only exception to that is that we have just signed an extension of a relationship we've had with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts since 2016, whereby if you are certified with the Greater New England Council, you can very painlessly become certified with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Now, from the perspective of someone who ran a couple of minority-owned businesses, it would be an optimal solution if all of the states would accept our certification, because certification in and of itself doesn't lead to business, but it is normally an important first step to be considered for opportunities.
Jean, I'm going to direct this next one to you, and then Peter, feel free to jump in. But question here about business information technology. They're state certified, but still finding it very difficult to be able to bid, or if our bids are submitted, difficult to win the bids, asking for resources and help with the bid packets. So I guess there's probably a lot of stuff in there. There's first the piece of, obviously all small businesses need more resources and support to be able to have a kind of the winning package. But how would you directly respond to this person who put this in the chat here?
Sure. So I just want to make one comment about the question that the person asked about, do I need to be certified in Connecticut in order to do business in Connecticut? I just want to encourage folks, to think, I think Peter hit the nail on the head when he said certification is a tool. So you don't have to be certified to do business anywhere. It's really important that when you're looking to gain access to a new market, that you take the time to really understand that marketplace. And then if you choose to pursue opportunities there, then think about how does the state of Connecticut really view and value the certification. And I also have to highlight, that I have been a direct beneficiary of the program that Peter mentioned, because I am certified by the GNSDC, the Greater New England Minority Council. And when that opportunity became available for me to become certified in Massachusetts, the first thing I did, I looked at Massachusetts and I said, is there a market there? And quite frankly, we found a market there, and we just, a couple of months ago, I'm not going to say a couple of months ago, but we were able to leverage, we got the certification and leverage that certification to gain access to opportunities there. So I just wanted to mention that.
That's a great point, that you start first with, what is your opportunity and thinking about your business before you move to the certification itself.
Yeah, because like Peter pointed out, it's, for a small business, the act of getting certified and going to all these different portals is time consuming. And so that market research, that business plan, that strategy, that's how we really need to be thinking. And if it makes sense, then yes, wholeheartedly leverage. The one thing I like about the National Council is that they allow you to use your certification in your core states to get affiliations in other states. So that's kind of one of the strategies that we've used in order to, when we're looking at a new market. Well, does the NMSDC have a presence there? Can we can we become an affiliate? Can we become tied to an affiliate there, and then using them as a resource to help us with some of the market research. I also want to just answer the question that the person had, the IT company, with regard to bid packages. There are a tremendous amount of resources available to small businesses to help them with bids, proposals, RFPs. One of the ones that I recommend using is something called the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. And there are other small business development centers. There's the SBA, there's a minority, the MBDA. So what I say to companies that are really struggling because they have not been able to win opportunities is that they really need to take a step back and focus on that market research, understanding, am I in the right market? Who's my competitors? And what is the reason that I'm losing before they continue trying to pursue opportunities?
Peter, anything you want to add on to that point there?
So let me take a step back and just sort of piggyback on Gene's comments, which I think are right on. In addition to certifying businesses as being minority owned and controlled, we also connect businesses with our corporate partners, and we connect smaller minority-owned businesses with larger minority-owned businesses to whom they can sell their goods and services. And the other thing we do that's right on point, and it's really applicable to New Haven, is that we provide what we call development services, which are one-on-one business consulting that's tailored to the size and sophistication of the minority business, and also subject matter training, and also our advanced leadership program, where we use the Kauffman Foundation's Fast Track curriculum. It's a 10-module program, and the participants are actually preparing a strategic plan that they can use to, raise capital and to guide their growth. And in New Haven, our efforts to provide these development services are funded by a grant we've received from the New Haven Foundation. And it's not just New Haven, but it's the entire 22-town footprint that's covered by the foundation, which includes Ansonia, Bethany, Branford, Cheshire, Derby, East Haven, Guilford, Hamden, Madison, Milford, North Branford, North Haven, Orange, Oxford, Seymour, Shelton, Wallingford, West Haven, Woodbridge, and New Haven. And we can provide all of these services I mentioned in terms of the one-on-one consulting and the subject matter training and the access to the advanced leadership program free of charge. Again, free of charge, because our efforts in providing this have been funded totally by the New Haven Foundation. So if you need help, in addition to all of the resources that Gene mentioned, please contact us. You can either contact me via email, or Ileana, or Keith Greenaway, who's our Director of MBE Advisory Services, because this is what we want to do. Because taking a step back, small businesses and minority-owned businesses need three things in order to grow and survive. First of all, they need contracts. Second of all, they need intellectual capital, which is what we're talking about with these development services, the one-on-one counseling, the subject matter training, the advanced leadership program. And thirdly, they need financial capital. So they need debt or equity in order to grow their business, either organically, which is one contract at a time, or inorganically through mergers, acquisitions, and joint ventures.
And Peter, a lot of this conversation comes down to access to these businesses that are going to have these contracts. I know you work with both the businesses that are offering out the contracts and obviously also the minority-owned suppliers. Can you give us a little bit on the mindset of the large business? How do they enter into this process? What are they looking for? What are their goals that they're trying to achieve?
So I think, 45 years ago, the whole positioning of what, folks thought about with respect to minority-owned business was a social service, civil rights mindset. It has evolved today. So today, just looking at New England, we've only certified about 250 companies as being minority-owned and controlled. Those companies have, in the aggregate, $2.7 billion in revenue. and they have about 20,000 employees, of whom 65% are minority. And of that 2.7 billion in revenue, in terms of, companies owned by Hispanics, Blacks, Native Americans, they represent over 55% of the aggregate revenues. And in terms of numbers of that 250 that are owned by Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, it represents over 55%. So when companies look at minority businesses today, especially the ones we've certified, they're looking about how can I make communities stronger? Because it is well documented that minority-owned businesses provide 4 benefits to local communities. They generate economic output, they create and maintain employment, especially with people of color, and the 65% number I just shared supports that. They generate incremental tax revenue, and the leaders of these minority-owned businesses also constitute a cadre of servant leaders in the communities in which they're operating. And one of the greatest examples of this is one of our former minority-owned businesses that was owned by a gentleman named Carlton Highsmith, who he is doing now in the New Haven area what he did when he was running his business, but he's doing it with even greater impact and force and effect. And so there are a lot of Carlton Highsmiths across New England and across the country. So corporations are looking at it. We're not just looking for the lowest cost provider. We are looking for a way to make communities stronger, because it is very clear that there's a racial wealth gap here in this country. And minority business development is one tool that can be used to reduce that racial wealth gap. And we've documented that. We actually conducted an economic impact study by a third party last year. And that study found that the 250 minority-owned businesses we've certified had a GDP contribution of $4.3 billion. They supported total jobs of 32,000. So it's not just the jobs at the minority-owned businesses, but minority-owned businesses buy goods and services from other folks. And those other folks and their employees spend money. So the economic impact is what corporate America is looking at now. And we have a number of ways we connect our corporate members and our minority-owned businesses. We have, matchmaking events, and we're doing them still in a virtual environment. We have quarterly networking sessions. We have sessions where corporate America tells everyone how they want to do business with third-party vendors, and we have signature events. But the most important thing we do is that we try to make sure that we have a way to connect the right vendor with the corporation, because some minority-owned companies might be too small to sell directly to certain corporations. So one of the things we've done since 2017, we've created a very robust and vibrant ecosystem of having minority-owned businesses that have less than $1 million in revenue sell to those who have more than $1 million in revenue. Because larger minority-owned companies, and I can attest to this from the time I ran a minority-owned company in Connecticut, we bought goods and services from everyone, and we really made a special effort to try to buy those goods and services from minority-owned businesses.
Gene, and this really goes back to, I think what you touched upon is finding those opportunities. So how do you advise businesses to start to find these opportunities that are out there?
So I think, Peter's comments regarding, the change in corporate America are very important for minority businesses to kind of note now. But I think even more important in this place where we are in history, with respect to all of the social unrest and this, I think, desire to course correct. I think corporations are paying a lot more attention to the fact that minority and women-owned businesses have been underserved, and they have not been properly represented in the supply chain, despite the good efforts that many people have made. So one of the things we're advising our clients to do is to be, again, very strategic about looking at the actions and behaviors of these corporations. As an example, we saw, and I'm seeing an increase in companies like Coca-Cola, for example, who put out a statement a couple of weeks ago where they're making a commitment to spend money in diverse communities. I saw something else this morning where another group is, a technology company is talking about, Bristol Myers Squibb, as a matter of fact, is talking about the fact that they are going to spend $1 billion with minority and women-owned businesses by 2025. So that's very different from some of the other types of course corrections that I'm seeing. I think it's really important for companies to really start investing in the community. And I think a good percentage, 95% of the small businesses are typically small, so that's something else that I think corporations need to really start looking at, is that we can't always be too small. We represent jobs, we represent our communities. So I think it's important that corporations start looking at their processes to see how they can better integrate with small businesses as we are. Not everybody wants to scale to become a global competitor. With that said, as a small business, again, I use the NMSDC as a resource to connect to those 1,700 members. Most of their website and information is on, is available through the NMSDC. And so what I recommend is that small businesses really think about what is it that they need to do to gain access to the supply chain, and that they take advantage of the services that are available through the NMSDC and other organizations, because we as a community need to think differently if we're going to survive, quite frankly, post-COVID, with all the course corrections that's happening. We have to adapt, and we have to do business differently. So step one is, again, market research, looking at those corporations in our local region that could be good customers for us, and then really doing the self-assessments to see, okay, if I want to do business locally with anchor institutions in New England, how does my business need to change? How does my internal processes and procedures need to change to ensure that we deliver at the level that corporate America expects?
And Jean, for anyone who's on here with a corporation, part of the procurement process, are there things that they can do to kind of meet the businesses where they are and get them up to the level? Maybe not every minority-owned business is at the level of what that corporation expects right now, but are there things that they can do to help get them to that level to be able to be a successful supplier?
Yes, absolutely. In some of the work that I'm doing, a lot of our clients are looking at diversity within diversity, and they're really taking a look at their supply chain process. So step one is really kind of looking at their business practices to see, where are they buying goods and services from? And if it is not feasible, sometimes I was reading an article this morning where one of the companies said, we don't know where to find minority and women-owned businesses. Like, we don't know where to start. Well, a great start is connecting with us, the chamber, connecting with Peter's organization to see, to learn how can you connect with minority and women-owned businesses. And one of the steps that I saw a company take was they started encouraging their suppliers, as Peter mentioned, to, for some of the smaller things, to start including at least one or two, and this was just, again, this morning, but at least including one or two either local or diverse supplier in the supply chain. At one of the projects I'm involved in with the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, I'm on the JFK redevelopment team, and one of our functions is what we call debundling. When we look at large procurement opportunities, we now look at them from the perspective, like, we have to match those opportunities to what the face of the community looks like. So it's not feasible to say, oh, we've got this, I don't know, just using random numbers, $40 billion spend for a particular product or service where there is no viable minority, local, or small business to do that work. So then we need to look at those spending opportunities and say, okay, how could we be more inclusive and breaking down some of those packages. So it's a multifaceted approach, which doesn't happen overnight. It starts with the desire to be more inclusive, and then looking at the procurement process in general. And I do think, again, that partnerships with local institutions like, the chamber, like the GMSD EDC is important, because we can share expertise, make connections, and we can also be a resource to connect those small businesses to the services that they need.
Peter, I'm sure you have a few things to add, and let me also just throw in, we're talking a lot about large corporations because they have set programs, but even a small business, how can they start to diversify the suppliers that they use? And I think you touched upon this a little bit when you talked about your own experience.
So let me answer both. Let me just piggyback on the initial conversation. I think that it's important to look at, for New Haven-based minority-owned businesses, if they want to do business with corporate America, your potential market is not just corporations in Connecticut or corporations in New Haven, it's corporations around the country. Yeah, so you really need to think about the opportunity a lot broader geographically. And to Jean's point, the quickest way to unbundle, and a lot of corporations who are really committed to having a diverse supplier base are using this, is to have tier 1 and tier 2, requirements, so that if someone is not large enough to sell to a large corporation directly, because if you think about the way corporate America structures its supply chain, it's trying to lay off risk. So the bigger the vendor, the more risk they can lay off. But that vendor might not be able to, provide every aspect of the good or service that's required by the customer. So that vendor is going to turn around and buy, services and goods from someone else. And so if the corporation is mandated that I want to make sure when you go out to fulfill your requirements to me that you look at and use diverse vendors, you can have an immediate impact in terms of increasing the amount of revenue that's flowing down to minority-owned companies. To the second point, and again, I think that this is important, to really try to match opportunities with those who look like they can meet the opportunity. Because if a corporation is in the market to buy chickens and you sell ducks, I don't care how good your ducks are, they're not going to want to buy them. So it's really important to be very strategic, to look at how do I assess what I sell, assess what I do, and make sure that I'm going after opportunities where I have a very realistic shot at being successful. Because again, just to chase every opportunity that a corporation has, because in our case, a lot of times we hear about opportunities directly from our corporate members. We will reach out to minority businesses who are certified by us, and even if they're not certified by us, if they appear to have the services or the goods that meet the corporation's needs, we'll get in contact with them. Because I think that there is an opportunity, irrespective of size. Because if you look at in Connecticut alone, the number of companies that are buying goods and services from someone else is enormous. If you look at the typical company income statement, other than personnel costs, that's always going to be the largest component. They are buying a lot of goods and services from someone. And again, if we can make the argument that doing business with minority-owned companies is not just the right thing to do, which it is, but it's really the smart thing to do if you're trying to build communities, because every company needs more market share. So to the extent you can have a geography and an economy that's made stronger because you have done something to reduce the racial wealth gap, you have created an opportunity for more people to be able to buy what you're selling. And irrespective of size, every company needs more market share. So if they think about minority business development differently, not just as a social service moral obligation, but think about it as an economic development imperative. And it's so easy to get from where we are now to where we want to be in terms of, reducing the discrimination and the economic inequalities that currently exist in this country.
And then Peter, just following up on that too, how about other small businesses that don't have a necessarily built out procurement process, but what should be their thought process to diversify their supplier base?
Well, I mean, from a self-serving perspective, we have companies here in New England that are part of our network that are smaller than you would imagine. And we have, multinational companies that are doing business across the country and across the world. So I think that, whether you're a multinational corporation or a small company with, let's say, 50 million in revenue and 100 employees, you can, really benefit from an economy that is more inclusive, more diverse, because again, the basic point is that if you're supporting minority-owned businesses, you are making the economy stronger. You are making the community stronger. So it's going to benefit you in ways that you can quantify and in ways that you might not even be able to quantify, but it is definitely going to make the community stronger. So, the size is no excuse for not, proactively and aggressively seeking to expand the base of whom you do business with.
Gene, getting a little technical here, but there's a question in the chat about ways to stay up on state bids, government contracting, and I know that's an area that you focus on as well as government contracts. First, kind of, is it a daunting process working with the government and their procurement process? And then how do people, what's the best way to tap into it?
Sure. So for me, I do not see government contracting as a daunting process at all. In fact, I love it because it's pretty straightforward. With that said, it is a process, and people who want to do business with the government really do need to understand that there is, the government has a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that the contractors that they work with meet certain requirements. So step one is making sure that your firm meets those requirements. And some people can see that as a daunting thing. You have to register on various websites. It's also really important. I tell people that they should focus on, ensuring that they have a process for, managing their back office, because government agencies will look at things like your background, your business background. So I think that's really important. In terms of being able to connect to opportunities, the state of Connecticut has a robust website where information is readily available about opportunities on how to do business with Connecticut, and all of the bids and proposals are on that website. I believe it's ct.gov. I'll send it to you, and you can certainly share it with the participants on today's webinar. But to answer the question and just to share a little bit of my experience, every new market, like we just went into Massachusetts, and so that's the process. Register, understand the market, get certified, and then start looking for those bid opportunities on those various portals. And as Peter pointed out, there are various different levels that you can work at. When we go into a new market, we go in with the mindset that we want to be a subcontractor, meaning we want to participate with a larger prime that has more experience than us, that is looking to meet certain quotas and or requirements on their contracts to work with local and diverse firms. And that is where we gain access to information, experience, market share. And I feel like this is something that almost any small business can do once they've taken care of the foundational part of the business, which is making sure that they have a robust process to manage their back office so that they can meet the standards for doing business in a particular region. For us, I can attest to having zero revenue in a particular market space and quickly being able to grow market share as a subcontractor. So is it daunting? It can be, but the process as far as doing business with the government is transparent, and I find it easier than doing business in the public sector, which requires, which is not as transparent, I should say.
Peter, quick question for you here. Someone was asking if they're already certified with WBENC. Should they also certify with your program? And then I'll also, as a follow-on, we had a question from Career Development Services at Albertus Magnus College, and just asking about ways to connect students with minority-owned businesses as far as job opportunities.
So if I understand the first question, I think the organization you're referring to is WeBank, which is the equivalent of the National Minority Supplier Development Council. If a woman-owned business by itself is not certifiable as a minority-owned company, but a women-owned business that's owned by a qualifying ethnic minority is, but you would still have to go through the certification process with us. But like I said, it's the certification process is not that painful because we really have intentionally tried to push as much as we can to making it electronically submittable, very transparent, very straightforward. So I think that if someone is interested, again, just touch base with Ileana Perisic or just visit our website and you can start the process.
And then as far as, a little bit off topic, but still obviously, one of the key things we focus on at the Chamber is workforce and filling the talent pipelines. What would you say to students out there, either just recently graduated or getting close to graduating, job opportunities with minority-owned businesses?
Well, just like any type of organization, but especially business, the talent that you're able to attract and retain is very important to your success. So minority-owned businesses are no different in that regard. They are always looking for talent. When you think about minority-owned companies, I think one of the things you really have to do is change the definition we have in our minds, because I know a lot of times when folks hear about the term minority businesses, they think about small, struggling, new. And that's certainly part of the reality, but we also have, in our network, companies who are seasoned. And again, if you think about the 2.7 billion in aggregate revenue, you didn't get there by having only companies that are small and new. So there is a continuum from very small and very new to very seasoned, growing, have employees. And in fact, at the other end of the spectrum, in the network that represents our 12,000 minority businesses certified by all of the regional councils, the largest minority-owned company in our network is a Black-owned company in St. Louis that has about 12 billion in revenue, about 800 million in net income, about 3,000 employees, and they, on average, buy 300 million from other minority-owned businesses every year. So that's the other end of the continuum. So I think it's very important for folks who are looking for opportunities, students, to apply, identify minority-owned companies, reach out to them because they are looking for talent. And, organizations like us, we actually have had interns, paid interns, by the way, and they can do so much more than I could have when I was in college in terms of making contributions to organizations. So again, keep in mind organizations like ours, there are opportunities for, internships, there's opportunities for permanent employment. We're relatively lean. We have 5 employees, 3 in Massachusetts and 2 in Connecticut, but we are growing in the midst of this pandemic, because there is an intense laser-like focus on the importance of the work we do in terms of addressing some of the issues that have been laid bare. COVID-19 made it very clear that it wasn't attacking everyone equally. The police misconduct we've seen has been very clear that it's not directed across the board. And so corporate America is focused on that. Leaders in the public sector, like State Treasurer Sean Wooden, have focused on that, and they've called out Wall Street and corporate America. So I think that you're going to see more opportunities for young people to have internships and permanent employment in organizations like ours, as well as in minority-owned businesses. Just keep in mind, you need to change the definition of what you think about as a minority-owned company, because just like the minority community is not monolithic, the minority business community is not monolithic.
Great point. We're coming up close towards the end of our time here, so I'm going to turn to each of our panelists for a final word. But if Jean and Peter, if you could both also just put in a way for people to get in touch with you. I think we've had a few people who want more follow-up information. So if you could add that to the chat, and also you can always contact the chamber, and we can make connections with everyone for Peter and Jean. But Jean, let me turn to you. Just some final thoughts on takeaways for businesses that are online. They're looking for ways to get started. I know it's a lot of the topics we've covered, but what's something you want to leave people with today?
Sure, thank you, Garrett. So what I want to leave folks with is the inspiration and the knowledge that this is the time. If you've ever thought about how to, and I think everybody's thinking about, okay, how do we pivot? How do we increase our revenue? Where do we get new revenue streams? Doing business with government agencies and large corporations is one of the most significant ways, as far as I'm concerned, to accomplish that goal. In fact, WBENC put out information on their website a couple of days ago about the most successful women-owned businesses, and 68% of the most successful women-owned businesses had a contract with a large corporation or a government agency. They also tend to do work globally. And in all of the conversations, I think Peter's very on point when he says that corporations, government agencies are now really focused on how can they be more inclusive? How can they work with us? So this is the time for us, is really now. Couple of things that companies are looking for. Number one, they're looking for innovation. So this is something that small businesses can contribute to in ways that large businesses sometimes can't. The other thing is adaptability. In today's environment, small businesses need to adapt. They need to change. They need to think about, what is our world, what does our workplace look like 5 years from now, considering everything that's happened? And collaboration is essential. It's so, so important for companies to really think about ways that they can work with each other. So for us, even as if you're a very small minority women-owned business, you should be thinking in terms of, is there another minority business that you can work with? Because that is a way. I see large corporations do this all the time. They joint venture, they team, and we tend to, as a small community, not think that way. That is an instant way that you can scale your business right now by by aligning with another minority, woman-owned, or even non-minority business. You can still collaborate with something else, but thinking in terms of, you might be an office of one today, but the minute I collaborate with another organization, that gives me increased past performance and increased resources. So my takeaway is, this is the time to focus on it. Small businesses should be thinking about how they can get into large corporations and government agencies and take advantage of the resources that are available to them today.
Great, thank you, Jean. We appreciate it, and really do appreciate you co-chairing the Diversity and Inclusion Council. And I'll put in a plug for that anyone that wants to get involved, you can reach out to myself, the Chamber, Jean, Jesse Phillips, who helped set this up, who works at the Chamber, and we'll get you plugged in as well. Peter, I'll turn to you. Final thought, a takeaway for everyone who joined us here today.
I'll just sort of reiterate a point I made and put a little more meat on the bones. We really need to be more innovative and more robust in what we think about as a minority-owned business, because clearly it's not only those that are small and new, it's also those who are seasoned, growing, have employees. And let me add a third opportunity that is now present because there is more capital available and because NMSDC has revised recently some of the rules that it uses to determine what a minority business enterprise is that corporate America, and I want corporate America to sort of pay attention to this too. Every year they're divesting subsidiaries, divisions. Every year, non-diverse parts of their supply chain have situations where the children don't want to take over the business, the current owner is near retirement. So you can have change of control transactions where you create a minority-owned company overnight by having a person of color or a management group that's of color purchase a company. And you might think that's crazy. Say, how can I do that? There are a lot more sources of private equity capital out there than there were historically. In fact, right here in Connecticut, we have certified a private equity fund in Stamford, Connecticut. It's called Small Business Community Capital. There's a woman that runs it named Monica Mantilla, and she is looking for opportunities to not only back existing minority-owned companies, but also minority-owned companies that could be created by buying a supplier that's non-diverse or by buying a division or a subsidiary that a corporation is divesting. So let's just please think more expansively and more robustly and more innovatively about what a small business is, especially a minority-owned company.
Great. Well, thank you, Peter and Jean, both great points. We appreciate your partnership in the Chamber. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Just a couple of quick announcements before we wrap up. I do want to let everyone know we have our annual policy summit and end of summer connect coming up on September 1st. Workforce development is going to be our primary topic. And very pleased to let everyone know we have all of our presidents of the universities in our region, including Yale, Quinnipiac, Southern, Gateway, Albertus, University of New Haven, all taking part in our first panel. And then we'll be talking with Garrett Moran from the Governor's Workforce Council, as well as some of the plans that are coming up. And we have some unique opportunities for people to connect as well in small groups. So please go to our website to join for that. And then later today, we have our Discover the Chamber. So if you're looking to get more involved in the Chamber or considering joining the Chamber, go to our website. You can sign up for today's meeting session that we have at 1 o'clock. Again, thanks again to Peter and Jean, the Diversity and Inclusion Council, and all of our team. And thank you for joining us. Hope you have a great day.